when Tesla designs a product, they don't just design their product, they design it for manufacturing.
Yeah.
The two are intertwined so tightly together that they make sure that not only is it a great product, but it's a product we can actually mass produce. The Cybertruck, on the other hand, was they probably didn't think too much about how it was going to be manufactured first, and that has been some of the headaches that they've had. They're not going to be making that with the next generation vehicle, but definitely the Cybertruck, there was a little bit of delay getting it out because they had to invent new processes.
Yeah.
And that was what was interesting to learn about at the Cybertruck reveal.
Yeah. So you went to the Cybertruck reveal, and it's interesting to see. I've talked about with many experts as well on my channel, and with Lars and with Brian from my Tesla Weekend, of course. Also had an expert in crash tests. It's so interesting to see the inventions that went into the Cybertruck, the platform of the production. What do you think? Do you think the Cybertruck production line will impact the other lines? I mean, for me, it's obvious.
They're going to learn some new techniques that are going to come over, but it is such a different vehicle than the others. So most of the other vehicles, you have a lot of spot welding going on in the vehicle. I'm not aware of any spot welding going on in the Cybertruck. It almost looks like there is none. And for us, it's like the magic of how are they actually getting those panels onto the car itself, because you cannot see any spot welds or any places where it's joined together. Yeah. And it seems like they're using a lot of other adhesives and some other capabilities, perhaps using laser welding or something like that to get those panels onto the backing. So that's a little bit different. I'm not sure if they're going to do it in the next generation, but they're going to learn a lot. They definitely are. And they came up with a new way of doing bending, what they call air bending, which is interesting because whenever you take something in a tool and crimp it, you always end up getting some witness marks or others that are kind of left behind that shows that where you were clamping it down. They're trying to find a way that that if the tool is running over, it's going to make marks. Yeah. And so if air is doing the bending, it doesn't leave marks.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's a new process, which is rather interesting to see. They clearly are using a lot of laser cutting because the panels are very precise. You can see that when you look at it up close, how precisely everything is cut out, and then also very precisely bent to be able to come together. So I was impressed looking at the vehicle to see how well made it is. Yeah. It's very attractive up close. And you really have to see it in reality. And fortunately, you can't see it yet in Europe, but it is showing up in showrooms in the U.S. and it showed up in a showroom near me. And I went up and took a look at it up in Tampa. And it was quite impressive.
And for the regulation, again, I've covered that on my channel because I try to give the unique German perspective on Tesla. And of course, I'm located in Europe and I'm looking into this. And as far as I know, with everything from the lights to the shape, okay, the shape, maybe, there is something there still to figure out, but everything else, the weight, also with the steer-by-wire, is also possible in Europe. We already had some approvals of that. The 48-volt architecture in combination is a new thing. This is true steer-by-wire in comparison. Yes. The steer-by-wire before that was like an intermediate step between the old and new technology from the different car manufacturers. But also the guy in the Tesla showroom said also to us that just the crash test safety is still the last thing that the Europe have as a concern. And then we have to wait for the Euro NCAP results. And then it should go.
Do they know what the concern is? Is it with other vehicles?
It's just pedestrian safety. Okay. And based on my visual analysis and people I talk to, this looks like it has enough crumble zones and is soft enough. But we need the data from the sensors.
You need it. Now, the one thing that it looks to me when looking at the Cybertruck versus a normal pickup. A normal pickup is very high. Yeah. So if you get hit by a normal pickup, you get knocked down and you get run over. Yeah. If you get hit by the Cybertruck, there's a good chance that if you get hit, you would get actually flipped over on the top, and that is a much better outcome. Yeah. So it's not so high that it's going to knock you down. So that may be one of the things that's an advantage for it, and which I would think it will probably pass the pedestrian safety for that reason.
Yeah, I also agree. And let's see how it's going to unfold. But the more interesting thing here is, talking about the compact now, the Cybertruck has a lot of technology that's going to go into the compact. The compact we know is designed for the Unboxed process. Yes. Is the Cybertruck as well designed for the Unboxed process, or still?
It could be. It could be. It doesn't look like it's using that.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if eventually it's going to do that. But of course, one of the things that's going to go from the Cybertruck into the new vehicle is clearly a 48-volt architecture. Yeah. And that's very important for unboxing, because it means the harnessing that you're putting together is a lot easier to put together that actually complements the unboxing process. They're probably going to also use steer-by-wire in that. So a lot of those...
And brake-by-wire.
And brake-by-wire.
Yeah.
All that's going to move
because
over.
Brembo, the brake system developer or company, also developed brake-by-wire already, so it is possible. There's data there. And Brian, I have to give a shout out there. He had a very interesting theory that still I have to get to the meat grinder. Shout out to my Tesla weekend here. He said that if you can accelerate in 2.6 seconds, guess what? Your fail-safe could be the engine that brakes the car. A little bit slower than a real brake, but this could be the backup if something fails.
Oh yeah.
And that's a fail-safe.
The funny thing about the brakes is that in a Tesla, you almost don't need brakes. And our friend John Gibbs, he had to have the brakes in his Tesla checked out. It wasn't working. And they took it to the shop, and it turns out the problem was he isn't using the brakes.
Yeah.
And that what happens is if brakes don't get used, they corrode a little bit. And all I had to do is take it out on the highway, drive it like at least up to 50 miles per hour, and then do a little bit of braking, and that fixed it. And it turned out that his brake pads are not being used because everything is being done with regenerative braking. Now, the only time, like in a Model 3 that has LFP, if you're charging up to 100%, there's a good chance that when you start using the car early on in the day, before it gets down to 80%, it will actually be using the brake pads because it can't use regenerative. But on the other cars that are LFP, people are usually charging up to 80%, so they're almost never doing it. So it looks like they're probably going to make some changes in the software to make sure that those pads actually get exercised every now and then. Because if you don't use it, it's not that they don't wear out, it's just that they kind of get sticky and won't work correctly due to less use. And this is the great thing about regenerative braking, is that the brake pads, they have a lot of nasty chemicals in there. You know, cadmium and I think some other heavy metals that just end up getting sprayed everywhere because you get brake dust everywhere. It always ends up getting into groundwater and into our lakes and streams and all. So the more that we can reduce that, the better. So it's another plus for using EVs and regenerative braking. And again, like you said, it becomes like a fail-safe in many ways that it would be able to stop you if for some reason the brake pads failed or something else failed.
It's so interesting what's happening there. And now with TeslaBot in the picture, we've seen the agility. And we also seen the footage of lines everywhere. I mean, we, as Tesla analysts in that sense, or analyzing Tesla, we always see those factories and we see that people still have to bend over and get into the small itty-bitty bits. And why do you think we can't use, for example, a robot arm to do that? Why is it so difficult? Why do we need humans still in that step?
Well, the humans, because the humans are just small enough to be able to fit into those different areas. So an industrial robot is a big brute. It's like asking King Kong to do the job. It just won't fit in there. So you need to have someone that's a little bit smaller that actually has a fit arm. More gentle and also more mobile. So you're trying to crawl into these different spaces sometimes to that final assembly. Now the unboxing process is going to change it a little bit by making sure a lot of those things that were sort of happening in the final assembly that required people crawling in there, you won't have to do that as much. So it's going to be a lot easier to automate, maybe with other methods. And during the Cybertruck event, they did show I think it was the front motor being assembled into the Cybertruck. And it is being done with traditional robots. And part of it is because they've designed the whole thing to be easier to assemble. So the casting is a wide open fork and everything just kind of drops in. And so it's very easy for a human to do that. But if it's really easy for a human, it's even easier for a robot or for automation, in this case, the traditional robot. So I was looking at that and saying, wait a minute, those traditional robots just put Optimus out of a job there. Because that was usually one where a human operator would probably come over and bring it over with a lift assist because it's too heavy for a human. But they were able to get a really big brutish robot to be able to pick it up, bring it over, and another brutish robot come in and then with the tooling go ahead and do the fastening that was necessary. So you're seeing more and more automation along those lines, and some of it will be traditional, and some of it will be what used to be done manually. Optimus will just be able to come in and start to do a lot of it.
Yeah, it makes absolutely sense. I think also the Unboxed method, the speciality is that you have those separate parts. The structural battery pack is already the middle part of the Unboxed process, already in use at the Cybertruck. You can see that the seats are, some seats are already mounted to the battery, and then lifted up. We've seen that in some of also the Model Y, I think. The new iteration of the Model Y was also done with the structural battery pack there as well. Yeah, it's interesting to see that. And
it's interesting to see that from the standpoint of final assembly. Because usually the final assemblies, you have to go through the body in white, and then the body in white has to get painted. Then after it gets painted, you can start putting things in. But because the Cybertruck doesn't have a painting process, they're reversing the order of operations on a lot of things. They're able to optimize it very differently, because it's not like, oh, we can't do that process until it gets painted. It's like, no, you can do it early. So there's a lot of these things that they're able to get in the, so basically there is almost like no such thing as final assembly anymore. It's just, we start building it up, we start putting things in.
It's like Lego.
When
You
it's
have
the easiest
Lego
time to
pieces
put it in.
Yeah.
And that's why you needed the humans towards the end, because it was so awkward to be able to get in there, because you were assembling these things almost at the wrong time, but you had no choice because you had to paint the thing first.
Yeah.
So now what you do is you say, wait a minute, before we start putting all these other body panels in there, let's go ahead and fit everything else in that we want in there, and now start putting the body panels on. In the unboxing process, we'll do the same thing, because whatever painting is happening, it's happening somewhere else, and it's not a full body in white that's going through. So that's going to definitely be an advantage.
Everything that the Musk companies do kind of merge together more and more. You feel that. Everything is set up for the future in that sense. I think the Cybertruck was also, it's not about the Cybertruck itself. It is, of course, about the self, the vehicle, everything, but it's about designing a future vehicle, something that is never designed before.
Right.
And with the Unboxed process in mind, and the $25,000 car, in my opinion, will have stainless steel, will be the same cyber design as well as the van, because the van is actually just a Cybertruck with a different body on top. And that's why I also think the regulation and getting the Cybertruck here into Europe would be important for Tesla, to have legislation ready to pump these things out immediately, because everything below the Cybertruck is possible.
There's going to be Cybertruck variants. There are. Yeah. So we don't know if the next generation is going to be just like it. I mean, Tom Zhu did kind of wink when he said something about, painting is difficult or expensive. Almost like, okay, what are they doing? Is it going to be stainless steel, or is it going to be made out of some other material that does not need to be painted? Or are they coming up with another way of being able to do the coating or something that is a very different process? But I do see that Cybertruck variants coming along. I know there's a lot of people that have dreamed it up and have done some AI, and they've done sort of like what Rivian did. So Rivian had the RT1 and the I think it's the RTS, which is the SUV version of the pickup. And I've seen some versions of the Cybertruck like that rather than having the bed, extending it out like an SUV, that's a full 7-seater, and it looks absolutely nice. It's just like a Cybertruck, almost the same form. It's like, they could do something like that if they wanted to.
They could.
And it may not be like a cyber van, it's a little bit more almost like a minivan. But then you could have a variant which is a little bit bigger than that, which could be the true cyber van. So there's no doubt about it. It just depends upon whether they can see that this production process they can ramp up, and if they can get good volumes out of it, and it's very easy to do, they might say, yeah, we can come up with lots of variants, without a doubt.